Hi, I'm Joanne Molinaro, and I am so excited to be here and to facilitate this discussion for my favorite podcast ever, The Path and the Practice. And we're going to talk today a little bit about specialization in the legal career. I'm joined here today to my immediate right by Kristen McGavern Sikora. She is a senior counsel in our litigation department. And I'm also joined by Amanda Beggs, also a senior counsel in our business department. Both of these are superstar lawyers at our firm. I'm really excited to dig into their practice. So let's start with you, Amanda. Could you maybe just give us a little bit more information about your practice?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Joanne. As Joanne said, I'm a senior counsel. I sit in our Milwaukee office, and I'm in our environmental and energy regulatory practice group. I've been with the firm for, I think, almost 9 years now. It feels like one day, sometimes 20. So, yeah, really excited to be here.
How about you, Kristen?
Thanks, Joanne. I am a new senior counsel. So as of February 1st, this is my first year. So it's a
Congratulations.
new adventure at Foley for me. I'm a member of our consumer products team, so in the manufacturing sector, but I focus on consumer product safety and regulatory advising work, and I'm also a litigator, so very excited to be here today.
Amazing. So I know that all sounds super complicated, but we'll dig into it. Before we do that, I want to start pretty much at the very beginning, and I don't mean at the beginning of your illustrious careers here at Foley, as they can only be. I actually wanted to start with where you guys grew up. Where are you from? So, Amanda, maybe tell us a little bit about where you're from.
I grew up in Frankfort, Illinois. It's a southwest suburb of Chicago. Went to Lincoln Way East High School. Go Griffins.
And I'm from the south side of Milwaukee, so right by Mitchell Field Airport. That's where I grew up.
Where'd you guys go to college?
I went to Marquette University in Milwaukee. Yep. I ran cross country and track there and studied journalism.
And I went to UW-Madison, so go Badgers.
Now, when you guys were in college, did you already enter school knowing, okay, I'm going to be a lawyer, so this is just a stepping stone there? Or was it more like, I don't really know what I want to be? Or did you want to be like a violinist or something like that?
I did not know that I wanted to be a lawyer. As I said, I went to Marquette for journalism. I wanted to be a print journalist, newspaper writer, a la Rory Gilmore, if you're familiar. So that was what I intended to do. And it was also during the time where everyone was saying there's not going to be any newspapers. So quickly started thinking of Plan B, and the writing sort of skill set transferred well. Took the LSAT and went from there.
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. How about you?
So I majored in legal studies, sociology, and political science. So it was pretty obvious where I was headed. I was either going to become a philosopher or I was going to go to law school.
Actually, two very closely related fields.
Yeah. There was a brief stint where I thought I was going to be a Rockette. Obviously didn't work out.
There's
Didn't
still
make
time
it.
for you.
Yeah. There's still hope. I'm 32. I can make it. But yeah, I've kind of always known I wanted to be a lawyer.
Wow. I want to stay on that a little bit, Kristen, because I always think it's so interesting, especially when people say, I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer, because that was certainly not the case for me. It doesn't sound like it was the case for Amanda. But what did you actually think being a lawyer meant?
I always figured I was going to be in court. So the litigation focused perspective, I thought I was going to be doing a lot of arguing, speaking in front of people, that sort of thing. I also, like Amanda, really liked writing. And my brother is also a lawyer, so that kind of helped. And so I got kind of a feel talking to him about what the legal profession might entail. And I thought it would be good for me.
I think there's this interesting glamorization of what we do as attorneys. Amanda, what did you think that you were signing up for when you decided, okay, I'm going to make a little transition here from print journalism to law?
Unlike Kristen, I wasn't totally focused on being a lawyer. I didn't ever really think I was going to be a litigator. I just really liked to write. I liked to analyze things. Beyond that, I don't know if I really knew what it would look like to be a lawyer. So I guess it took me a little while longer to find my path.
Amanda, what you say is very relatable. There are probably a lot of people who go into college and think they're going to do one thing, graduate and realize, wow, this world is so much larger than I imagined. And maybe this kind of narrow vision for my future isn't right for me right now. I'm going to maybe pivot a little bit. Do you have any advice for college students, either of you, when it does get a little overwhelming, I have to pick the career for the rest of my life, does it always have to be so focused and analyzed, or can it just be a little bit more, I'm going to take a look at what I can do well, and maybe this is what's for me?
My advice is to just have a broad base of experiences and take it all in. I feel like college is the time to do that. And I certainly, wanting to be a newspaper writer wasn't necessarily going to turn out for me. And so it was nice to be somewhere where I had a lot of opportunities to experience different classes, different people, different internships, just getting to know about different things that we can do. But I do think it's important to get a broad base of experiences.
Yeah, I agree with Amanda. I mean, you're not going to have your whole life figured out when you're 18, 19 years old. That's not how things are going to go. So like Amanda said, trying a broad array of things. I think most people too, even when they go to law school, it's either litigation or transactional work. You have no idea what exists out there. I had no idea that consumer products practice was a thing. I didn't know what my day-to-day was going to look like as a lawyer. I thought I was going to be doing what you see on TV where you're arguing in court all the time. That's not exactly what I do day to day. So trying a bunch of things and meeting as many people as you can and talking about what they do. So networking, making connections, and you'll find your way.
A lot of law students listen to this podcast, and I vividly remember kind of what you just described. When you're in law school, you think that the world is divided into business law and into litigation. And I remember the rude awakening I had when I started day one as a summer associate here at Foley. I was like, this is literally nothing like what I imagined. And day after day, that continued to prove itself. If you could try to maybe describe for our listeners, how is it different? What is a day in the life as an attorney at a large law firm nowadays?
It's different every day. So particularly in my practice, I work with folks who are retailers, manufacturers, all along the supply chain. So I'm learning a different business every day. It's a lot of emails and a lot of phone calls, I'm going to be honest, but it's fun. It's not me going into court and battling it out with someone every day, although I do that as a litigator. That's also part of my practice. But it's a lot of learning and talking to folks and solving their problems.
Yeah, solving their problems, or at least attempting.
Trying to solve their problems, yeah.
How about you, Amanda? I work with many different clients. I work with many different people in different practice groups. I get to work with litigators. I get to work in the business law department. I do a lot of compliance counseling. So it's varied. Like every single day, there's something different with a different client, and it's fast-paced, I'd say. We get a lot of sort of one-off calls or some new partner that I've never worked with before calling and saying, I hear you know something about environmental. Our client has this issue, and then you have to sort of pick it up on the fly.
Now, both of you guys mentioned that you enjoyed writing, and that was at least one of the components that led you to say, okay, I'll try this legal thing. Although it sounds like for you, Kristen, you're like, no, I'm doing the law thing. Rockets. No. But do you guys do a lot of writing in your practice?
The memo has turned into an email, right? So a lot of it's still writing and still communicating clearly and concisely, even though it's sort of in an email form. But yes, I mean, most of my day is spent writing, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with Amanda, but also I do write a lot of briefs. So as a litigator, I'm writing a lot to the court, writing a lot of letters or memos to clients. So that's a lot of writing.
Yeah. So before we talk about specialization, finding your area of focus, which I know is the topic of this podcast episode, I want to set the stage a little bit. You all have graduated from law school. You have your brand spanking new law degrees. You're like ready to conquer the world, and you end up at, your law firm day one. What are like the three most vivid things that you remember about those first few hours or days at Big Law?
And not knowing what you were going to do, or what it involved, and kind of being in the same boat with the people who started in your new class. At least you weren't alone. Right, you had a lot of people starting on the same day, and you could, hey, do you know how to bill your time? Or how are we supposed to fill in these entries? Like, what does that mean? Or someone told me to use Carpe Diem. Like, what is that?
Where do we get a pad of paper?
Yeah.
Just like that. Yeah.
I think that feeling of being a little lost when you arrive at any new workplace is certainly relatable. I remember the first thing that we learned as a summer associate was how to use our phone, which was actually like a 4-hour training. Yeah. And it's so ironic. I just got to the office today and they changed the phone on me. And sure enough, I had no idea how to use the phone. I was trying to call my assistant and I just kept getting a busy signal. So I had to have a tech guy show me how do I use this phone? Do I need another 4-hour training to use this phone? But it's funny how mastering even something as simple as, okay, now I know how to use my phone. Okay, now I know how to log into my computer can fill you with this sort of confidence, like in a very incremental way. What are some of the small things that you picked up over the course of the next year or so as a first-year associate that allowed you to feel more confident and empowered? Because there's no dispute. Our jobs are extremely stressful, and that anxiety that you mentioned at the beginning doesn't ever really go away. So what did you learn to help you cope with that?
I think the thing that helped me the most was getting to know the people that I worked with more closely and understanding what they were looking for and even just the format or how they liked to be communicated with. And once I learned that with the people that I worked with primarily, a lot of the anxiety sort of, you're right, it's always there in the background, but it sort of was in the background more and more. So it was more about learning the expectations and being able to meet them.
I think, too, building a good routine for yourself. So making sure that you eat breakfast and get some good rest. I like to work out in the morning because if I don't do it then, I'm probably not going to make it just because I don't feel like it, right? So getting those things in before you start your workday really helped me. Like Amanda said, the people here want to help. So if you have a question, you're confused, just go and ask somebody. I found some people that I really vibed with and I felt like were trusted advisors. So I would reach out to them and ask maybe those questions I felt nervous asking, the senior partner on the matter. And that really made me feel a lot more comfortable.
What do you have to say to those people who say that's just a myth? When you're a Big Law associate or senior counsel, you don't have time for yourself.
I would say that's not true. Not true at all. And you're a testament to that. And me too. That's how I get through the day and keep my sanity and make sure I'm the best version of myself for clients, for my colleagues, right? And my family. I would say too, you're your own worst enemy sometimes. So letting those voices kind of get in your ear, that can almost be just as bad as hearing it from, a naysayer out in the ether somewhere. Setting your own boundaries with yourself, that's like the biggest part of the battle, I think, is, having those rules, right, Joanne, of like, I'm not going to move this meeting unless it's a deposition or a court hearing. I'm going to keep this time for myself. I think that's the hardest part sometimes.
That is. That's why I put it in the calendar.
Yeah.
I got into such a habit of my calendar tells me what to do. And so I built it in so that, it's on the calendar. I can't deny it. I do want to talk now a little bit about that kind of evolution into identifying your area of focus. I know for me, I was a third-year associate by the time I kind of zeroed in a little bit on bankruptcy as a potential area of focus for me. And there's kind of a lot of things that went into it. But I'd love to hear from both of you. Let's start with Amanda. How did you guys kind of zero in with manufacturing?
I think it might be a little bit unique because I'm in the environmental practice group. And so we're already pretty specialized or in an area of focus, right? But within that group, we all have additional areas. So it probably took me, like you said, 2 or 3 years to sort of develop an area which is related to air emissions and particularly mobile emissions from vehicles and equipment and auto part manufacturers, sort of everything related to that. And it was a bit of happenstance, right? It seemed like something that not everybody in my group had experience with, and we have a lot of clients that are in that space, and so there was sort of a need. Somebody said, does anybody know about this? No, but I raised my hand and just learned about it, I guess.
I love that. How about you, Kristen?
So a little bit like Amanda, it kind of just happened. So I had left the firm for a year and did a clerkship. So when I came back, someone who works in the California office was looking for a local litigator who could be a client contact in Milwaukee. And I got connected with that person. It had to deal with plumbing products. So, not the most fashionable product or idea or case to work on, but yeah, hey, porcelain is trendy, right? So I signed up and just said, sure, I've got time. I'll work on this. I really liked working with that person. And I thought the consumer product space was really interesting. That's kind of how I fell into it. So I just kept doing more of that work and I really liked it, became a member of the manufacturing sector, joined the consumer products team, and now that's my area of focus.
I think the importance of the people that you interact with on a daily basis or even by happenstance is really an understated component of the way our careers often develop. Whether it's a mentor or it's, like you said, somebody, I just need somebody in Milwaukee. I had that happen many times as, a person in Chicago. I had a couple Milwaukee partners who were like, you're my girl in Chicago. You need to do this for, if there's a federal hearing in court and I can't get there. And a lot of my biggest cases kind of evolved from just that role. Can you talk a little bit more, Kristen, about that, about the role that mentors had, the role that your colleagues had, or even the role that other, partners from different offices had in sort of cultivating that choice?
Yeah. So at Foley, you're assigned a formal mentor, right? And I was really lucky. I got someone that I really connected with who really took an interest in my career. There's kind of a difference, I think, in my mind between a champion and a cheerleader. Cheerleaders are great, right? There are people cheering you on. They're kind of on the sidelines, though. They're not really kind of boosting you up. Whereas champions, those are the kind of people you want, right? They're going to be like pushing you to places maybe you don't feel quite ready to go yet. And thankfully, my mentor was also that kind of person. So she was a champion for me. I also made a lot of informal connections. So there were partners not only in the Milwaukee office, but in other offices like in LA, where I made this connection and they invested in me. And I kind of thought like, hey, they really like me and think I'm doing a good job. And our communication styles, so like Amanda was talking about earlier, they kind of meshed, right? There wasn't that conflict or that friction where I felt like, oh no, did I say the right thing? I'm not sure. I wasn't having those like post-call anxiety of like, do they like me? Do they not? Did I get this right? I just felt more comfortable and felt more confident. So it helped me build my confidence. And I really, it just kind of went from there. There's also senior counsel and more senior associates. I don't want to forget about those folks. Those are the people that I would go and ask like, hey, what is this partner like? Like, what do you think their style is? Or I have this problem. Like, what do you think I should do? And they would open their door, sit there for a long time, probably longer than they could or they had time to.
And that any of us can afford to.
Yeah.
Billable hours.
It's
yeah.
like the clock is ticking. And I really appreciated that. And I think that's helped me get where I am.
That's beautiful. Amanda, what about you? What role has mentorship or anything, peers, played in the development of your career?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been instrumental. As you said, our job is stressful and working at a big law firm can be stressful. And I think it's the people that you're with that, I mean, at least for me, have made it sustainable. And so, I mean, even just starting as a summer associate, a person who is still my mentor, and I hope will be my mentor forever, took me to a power plant. I mean, took me along to client events. I was a second-year law student, and I think it started then and it's continued on, and knowing that you have somebody who's got your back and is cheering you on, but being your champion as well, and is really invested in your growth is probably the reason why, I'm still here, right? So I think I don't know if I can even place a value on it. You have to have it. So
no, it's exactly what you said. It's probably the reason that we're all still here. I chose Foley. And, I'm sure like you, we all had many options when we were deciding which law firm that we were going to go to. And I certainly, it's no exception to that. But I chose Foley because I love the people that I actually got to meet on my callback interview and the multiple follow-ups that I had. And then, I've been with Foley for 17, 18, years. And I've always stayed because of the people, right? And I think that the role of mentors inside of Foley plays such a huge part in again, gaining that confidence to feel like, okay, I can do this job, not just, okay, but like exceptionally well. What about the role of external mentors? Because I remember, especially after I made partner, even when I was senior counsel, there were a couple of very confident, very just intelligent and wonderful women, in-house counsel and GCs at some of my biggest clients. And I always felt like even though they were my clients, there was this kinship between us. And they too had an invested interest in seeing me succeed as their outside counsel. And they sort of like took me under their wing. They invited me to things that, maybe didn't have anything to do with the case, or, we started talking offline, having chats about, oh, I know what it's like. And, I can understand because I was there too. Did any of that play a role in, again, through cultivating that career?
Yeah, I think for me, when I was doing my clerkship, that's really where I got a lot of those like external mentors, because it's not just the judge and the people who work in chambers, it's everyone who works in the courthouse. You see each other every day in the elevator, you kind of make friends with those folks. And what was really cool to me as a third or fourth year associate was like, wow, these federal judges know my name and they think I'm great. They want to know my opinion. They want me to write these things for them and talk about what I think, right? So that was a big confidence boost, but it was also a great way to build my network because I got to meet a lot of fellow clerks. There was like softball and all sorts of external events that you could go to, and I made friends there that I'm still friends with today. And now those folks are at other firms or potential clients. And I also keep connected with the judge, which is a really good connection to have.
Now, one thing I wanted to touch upon is this area of focus, whether, it's finding your niche or specializing a little bit. When I was a junior associate, like day one, they're like, you can never say no to anyone. You have to say yes to everyone. There's no such thing as saying no to a project or an assignment. You must be everything for everyone at all times, right? And so there is inherently an opportunity cost, right? That's built into kind of focusing in on whatever it is you decide. Why do you think that even so, that this approach that encourages finding a sector, finding your area of focus is actually beneficial to your practice?
I think it's been incredibly helpful for me to be able to meet so many people throughout the firm that I wouldn't have otherwise met in other offices. I wouldn't have any idea what they do. I mean, we're now in the manufacturing sector, and we don't have to get those emails that are like, does anybody know anything about environmental? It's like they can reach out to me. They know I'm in this group, and we can talk to each other about issues facing our clients that I might not be aware of in my particular area of focus. But now I know, oh, this person does IP things, very focused on this thing. I don't know anything about IP, but I know who to turn to. And similarly for me. So I think I have met more people within the firm, having been in the manufacturing sector for however long we've had it, the last several years, than I did in the first 5 years of my practice.
Yeah, I refer a lot of work to Amanda and kind of vice versa, where it's like, hey, we have this issue with the Consumer Product Safety Commission, or I have an EPA question, and it leads to more internal workflow too, which is really helpful.
I think what I'm hearing from both of you is that it's almost like branding. That's something that I'm very familiar with in my work right now is, okay, well, let's figure out, how do I make sure that the people who need the thing that I can provide know that I'm a person that provides it, right? I mean, especially I'm always like, we're hovering around 1,000 lawyers at our firm. How do I make sure that when a client, either an existing client or a potential client, needs something to do with consumer relations or needs something to do with environmental, that they know that I'm actually probably one of the best persons to do it, and perhaps identifying that area of focus and then allowing yourself the ability to sort of really identify very clearly what that actually means for your clients, for your colleagues, for your peers, and even for judges and opposing counsel. All of that sort of communication is really necessary in order to really allow yourself the ability to do this in a specialized way. Are there any drawbacks to that?
It can be hard sometimes, I think, when you are focused on a niche. thankfully, my practice, I still do moonlight a little bit, right? As a litigator, I do general commercial contract work. It's like if someone needs a litigator, I can do that, right? So sometimes like you might close yourself off to some opportunities, or folks might say, oh, Kristen does consumer product safety work. You don't have time to do everything, right? So you kind of do need to let some of those things fall off. Let the other folks who are building their niche or their area of focus, let them pick that up, and then just keep on moving forward. So yeah, sometimes you might lose a few things, but I think it's worth it.
I think that this idea of focusing in on what you want as opposed to kind of allowing the distracting voices outside of you, I mean, that can apply in so many different contexts, certainly in identifying your area of focus, your career at large, or even in your personal life, quite frankly. But I think the other idea is that when you talk about intention, I think it is okay to allow room for, well, this is something that I'm actually interested in now. Maybe it's something I should look into. I was a bankruptcy practitioner. I did class action lawsuits. I did fraud litigation. Doesn't really sound related, but at heart, I was a trial lawyer. And I was like, you throw me in where the fight is hottest, I'll do it, right? And that happened to come up in those contexts. But at the very tail end of, my real practicing career, I got really into cryptocurrency. And it was just something that I personally enjoyed reading about and looking into. And more particularly, I was really interested in blockchain technology, which is the technology underlying cryptocurrency. So I wasn't very much interested in crypto, like the finance aspect of it. I was really more interested, well, what is this technology and what does that mean for us? And eventually that led me to talk to many of our largest manufacturing clients about, well, supply chain issues. How does the blockchain sort of maybe optimize some of these issues? How does it streamline mass amounts of data in a way that makes it a little bit more manageable? And it was just a really fun, interesting little doggle to add to my practice. But I think the idea is it's wonderful to have an area of focus. And it's important, like you said, to really focus on it without too many distractions. But would you agree that it's also great to maybe build in a little room for adding things that make your life funner and make
Well, we got to evolve, right? The legal profession evolves, our clients' problems evolve, and sometimes you just have to learn it, right? There's new laws, there's new regulations. No one knows what they mean or what's going to happen with those laws or regulations. So you can be the person to school up on those things, to learn what they are, and to advise folks on them. So I think it is good to evolve, right?
It's always good to evolve. I wanted to talk a little bit more specifically about the manufacturing sector. What I'm picking up from both of you ladies is an enormous amount of efficiencies that are actually captured by being housed in these sectors. Kristen, Amanda is good at this. Amanda, that this is what Kristen does. So instead of sending out one of those massy, does anybody know how to do this thing? You already know. And you save so much time. And of course, in the manufacturing universe, efficiency is literally one of the most important things, right? In every imaginable way. Obviously, we want our clients to do the best thing, but we want them to do it as efficiently as possible. Can both of you sort of describe, whether it's these efficiencies or some other, concrete benefit that our clients receive as a result of this manufacturing sector and kind of this collective, specialization or knowledge pool that you guys have at your fingertips?
Yeah, I mean, I think because we have the manufacturing sector, we've been able to identify that we have, people that focus on all areas of the manufacturing industry, whether it's a particular type of product or if it's just, hey, you want to bring your product to market, we can help you with all of the stuff that goes into that, whether it's product labeling or supply chain, getting your contracts in order. We've been able to identify people that can help at all stages, which I think has been very beneficial for our clients.
Yeah, like Amanda said, it's kind of like cradle to grave servicing. So I deal with folks who are developing products and are like, we're designing this new product. What certifications do we need? Oh, by the way, we have this IP problem and we don't have our contracts in order. And while I don't do IP, I know who does, right? Because they're in the manufacturing sector and I can just kind of put that work in the different streams. And to the client, from their perspective, it's seamless, right? They're communicating with one person and they're getting clean work product. And on our end, it's really easy too to get connected internally. And like Amanda said, you've got that all the way out throughout the process. So it's really easy for us, but it is also really easy from the client's perspective too.
Which is exactly what they want to hear. The word easy.
Yeah.
Isn't always the word that we get to say, particularly as litigators.
It depends.
It depends is our favorite phrase. Well, now that you guys are at, senior counsel level, you've survived, which is a big thing. You made it. That's a really, really big achievement. Kind of looking back, is your career what you expected it to be when you decided I want to be a lawyer?
No, not at all. I'm definitely not doing, the stuff that I saw on Law and Order, right? But I think it's gone the way it's supposed to, right? I wouldn't change the way that it's gone or the trajectory. And I think it doesn't look like I thought, but a lot of things in my life don't, right? I'm not a Rockette, so we never made it there, but I think it's gone the way it should.
Yeah, and not for me either, but I guess my idea of what a lawyer looked like wasn't quite as crystal clear as Kristen's was, but the same. I think it's sort of evolved the way that it's supposed to, and I'm very happy with the people that I get to work with and the types of matters I get to work on and how varied my practice is.
So I know you guys talked about how this is probably not at all what you imagined when you decided you were going to be a lawyer. Did you ever think about what would be hard at that time for you as a lawyer?
I think I thought everything was going to be really hard, right? Like, I knew that I could get up and speak in front of people. Like, I felt really confident. I had done mock trial and forensics and things like that, but I really was not sure what it would be, right? I didn't know what things were going to look like. And I actually thought that building relationships with people was going to be more difficult than it has been. And that's been awesome that it hasn't been that way. But I was worried about how that was going to be, being a young person kind of going into like a very buttoned up corporate environment. I wasn't sure how I was going to fit in there.
Wow. And it totally turned out to be not the thing.
And, people accepted me for who I was, right? And people in a corporate environment come from all over the place, right? You kind of have this idea that everyone knows everyone and they come from this one certain place. And that has not been my experience at Foley. We interact with people from all over. Our clients are very diverse and come from a lot of different backgrounds and places. So you fit right in. It's kind of like a melting pot.
Oh, I love that. What about you, Amanda? Like when you were thinking like, okay, I'm going to not do this journalism thing. I'm going to do this lawyer thing. At that time, what did you think? Oh, wait, what are some of the things that might be hard?
Yeah, I think maybe opposite of you, Kristen. I tend to be a bit more reserved, and so like the public speaking and getting up and standing in front of a courtroom, I mean, that wasn't something that I anticipated I would do, and it's not really a huge part of my practice. But I think that was something I thought would be challenging, is just putting myself out there and being able to talk confidently to people on very complicated topics and things like that. I think confidence and sort of public speaking were some things that I was nervous about. And frankly, I was nervous about in law school and was nervous about interviewing. I was nervous.
Still nervous.
Right. And I mean, that I think doesn't go away, but I've come to find, I mean, that's part of my job, right? And so you learn how to do it. I've learned how to manage it for myself, and I would say it's still a challenge for me, but.
Well, what is the hardest part of your job then? If it isn't public speaking or communicating, I mean, it sounds like you've really nailed it. You have your system and you've nailed the communication, whether it's in a public setting or in an email. What is the hardest part of your job?
I think it will probably always be this, and it's not really substantive or related to the law. It's just time management for me. Not that I can't manage my time. It's just the hours in the day type of thing, and learning how to prioritize and what's most important from a career perspective, from a personal perspective, and what's going to get you the most balance so that I can continue to do this, right? And I think that's been the most challenging and is still the most challenging.
How about you, Kristen?
It's a little bit similar to Amanda's, but reminding myself that not everything is an emergency. So when you first start as a lawyer, there's kind of this feeling of like, I've got to get this done now. I've got to do all of these things. They need it now. That's usually not true. That's not the case. And like, yes, you need to be timely. You need to get things done efficiently. But like taking a moment to take a couple deep breaths and really think through things is really important. And I constantly have to have that reminder of like, okay, it's not an emergency. I will get this done. Everything will get resolved. And I have the time to sit and think this through and really make sure that I'm getting it right. But you have to have that little reminder, because otherwise, if you don't, you can kind of like Energizer Bunny through things, and that's not the best way to handle it. So
I think when I was in law school and kind of envisioning my future career as a lawyer, I had very similar concerns. I'm like, oh, I get really nervous. I have stage fright. I'm not good at, public speaking is not necessarily my thing. Or, what if I can't memorize every single rule of civil procedure, like, which is what the bar exam leads you to believe as being a lawyer, right? Memorizing all the rules. I had all these very technical sorts of concerns. And then as soon as I arrived at the firm, I realized that for me, the biggest challenge was this very amorphous feedback system. I was so used to grades. I was like, I'm good at grades. I'm good at tests. I'm good at A+, 100% stars, stickers on my, worksheets and things like that. But once I got to the firm, I'd, send a partner or a senior counsel a memo and I wouldn't hear anything. And I'm like, what does this mean? Like, did I do good? Like, or did I do bad? And it, oftentimes it wasn't until like 6 months in when I had my review where I'd received this sort of collective feedback, as opposed to like, well, I just want to know how I did on that one memo that I wrote 4.5 months ago, or, how did I do on this brief? And that, for somebody who basically built all of her confidence off of grades and sort of numerical measuring system, I had a hard time dealing with that. And it wasn't until I got to be about a 4th or 5th year associate where I was able to just grade myself. And I was like, okay, well, you know what? I've been doing this for 3 years and I kind of know what I'm talking about. So I kind of had to build that confidence over time. But like you said, it was nothing substantive. It was really no technical thing. It was just, well, how to be a lawyer in this field, which I imagine probably applies to a lot of different fields, not just in the practice of law. Well, I'm going to test your envisioning skills.
Oh boy.
So I want to ask you, in 5 years, we both know you guys are going to be rainmaking partners, so that's not a good answer to this question. Putting that to one side, what do you see yourself, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see your practice in 5 years? How are you going to evolve into that? Because as you said, Kristen, you got to always be evolving here. That's in every aspect of your life. I think that's growth, right? So, Amanda, in 5 years, who are you going to be? What is your practice going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to continue to focus on the area of focus I have right now. I think a lot of things that are going on in the environmental world are really exciting, like I mentioned, with electrification initiatives and things like that, and a number of states adopting regulations to reduce emissions from vehicles. And so I plan to continue to focus on that. There was just a new proposal from EPA on that yesterday, and so I have to go read like a 1,100-page document pretty soon. Yeah, so I mean, I anticipate that my practice will grow in that area, and I'll continue to do all of the other sorts of just more general environmental things that go along with that in terms of compliance and litigation and transactions. But I also hope that I can be a mentor to someone the way that I've had such great mentors. And I mean, I think I'm mentoring people. Hopefully they think I'm doing a good job, but I hope that I'll be able to be bringing someone along similar to those that have before me.
That's lovely.
Yeah, I don't think the regulators are slowing down. At least that's not what I've been getting. Yeah. And I'm sure you guys are, everyone's kind of keyed in on that. So I think dealing with all those new regulations, not only like Amanda said federally, but also at the state level, there's 50 states. So that's a lot of coverage, and we need people to kind of get up to speed on some of those things. So I plan to be like right at the forefront of that. And also, like Amanda said, building my team, right? I want to build a great team of people who are interested in this and kind of bring them along on the journey, just like I was brought along on this journey. So building the team and making it the best team it can possibly be, right? And getting folks who are interested in this and driven to do this kind of work.
Beautiful. We're all about championship teams here, always. So I want to get to final question. If you were sitting in front of, 1,000 different law students, just started literally day one of 1L year, what words of advice would you have for them? And then this is a very general question. It doesn't have to be specifically about area of law or, niching down or picking a firm. But if you had 1 minute to give them your best advice, what would it be? Let's start with you.
This might seem obvious, but don't be so hard on yourself. I think, Joanne, like you were saying, I was so hard on myself as a law student. I wanted those objective indicators of success. Like I wanted that A+. You're not always going to get the A+. You're going to make mistakes. Like I remember so many things that I did in my first 7 years of practice that were not perfect, right? Or was a little mistake. People will help you fix your mistakes. They're not usually as big or as scary as they might seem. So don't be so hard on yourself. Like everybody makes mistakes. We're all human. And this is just part of life, right? This is, at the end of the day, it's a job. And you're going to do the best you can do, and you're going to be great at it, but don't be so hard on yourself.
Excellent advice in all manners.
Just in general, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I would 100% echo everything you said. And I think the other thing I would add is I feel like law school is an environment that is set up to pit people against each other. And I think I fell into that trap sometimes too. But I would say, remember that these are your peers. You're going through the ranks together. They could be your clients someday, right? And so I would say, remember that and build relationships even at that point.
That's really important advice because it is very cutthroat and it is tempting.
Yes.
To kind of fall into that trap. But I think what you said is so right. Once you get here to the firm, you realize, oh, we're all allies. We're in it together. Some of my favorite moments ever are being in a war room with my colleagues. And literally it's like 4 a.m. and we're on like page 153 of the closing argument PowerPoint deck. Yes, we've got gummy bears, chocolate, and potato chips like all over the place. And it's like, well, what does that one sentence in that deposition transcript say that we can quote, but we can't? Like, I mean, those are my favorite moments about being a lawyer. And they wouldn't be my favorite moments if it weren't for my peers and my colleagues and the people who are in it with me. So, well, I want to thank you both so much for joining me for this conversation. This was hilarious. It was fun. It was illuminating, and it was really, really helpful. I want to thank all of our listeners for joining us as well. I hope you found this conversation as insightful and entertaining as I did. And I invite you to listen on any future episode of The Path and the Practice for additional illuminating conversations. Thanks so much.